Phil, we haven't seen each other since the axis of the Earth shifted back to normalcy.
Well, I mean, look, we're at least in the same time zone, so at least we were celebrating together. I don't see you guys in person enough. We need to do more of these get-togethers than we've done. Maybe everybody could sort of gravitate towards Atlanta somewhere near where I'm at sometime soon.
Dude, well, maybe we gravitate towards DC for like January 20th. that would be one hell of a meet and greet with meet and greet
it's gonna be
Antifa.
it'll be a madhouse up there. You know it will.
Yeah, no, I don't like that. I don't like crowds to that extent. And certainly there's going to be some diverging factions of that crowd. Phil, how has been everything since the election? What's been, I haven't even talked to you about what's been your level of elation?
Believe it or not, the state of Georgia did not crumble into the mantle of the earth. We didn't fall in the sea. The sky has not fallen, and life carries on. We've got some legal things going on involving the now president-elect. We've got the oral argument with the the Fani Willis RICO indictment. The oral argument in the Court of Appeals is set for, I think, the 5th of December. I really think that the Court of Appeals is going to toss her off that case, so that may resolve itself. So we're still following a lot of Trump-related issues here on the legal front.
Fani Willis was reelected, which is amazing. Yeah. What was the margin?
Okay, so her challenger she had a Republican challenger, a friend of mine named Courtney Kramer. I ran into Courtney and her boyfriend a couple days after the election. She tells me that she had like 31% of the vote in Fulton County. Donald Trump had 27%. So there's some bipartisan support for Courtney. There's also a brewing issue that and I know it's not going to be enough to overturn the results, but there's some shenanigans we think going on with that Fulton DA's race. Courtney's name was apparently left off the ballot in certain precincts, and I'm trying to get more information on that now. But that's what's brewing. It's in terms of like a little election controversy here.
Well, so hold on. She outperformed Trump himself in Fulton County.
And Trump outperformed himself 4 years ago by a couple of percentage points or so. I mean, look, when you go if Trump is at 27% and she's at 31%, that's not insignificant. That's a lot. So that means there's a lot of folks who voted, say, for Harris, but also voted for the Republican challenger for district attorney.
So where does she pick up the numbers to win this? I'm trying to find a graph, but I can't seem to find one. Like, what did she end up winning with? Was it 51-49, or was it sort of a bigger margin?
Oh, Willis? No. So Courtney only had 31-ish. So it was roughly, 69% of the vote. Look, Fulton County is deep, deep, deep blue. I think the last maybe Republican DA was maybe in the 70s. But the Fulton County government itself is deeply entrenched, shall we say, in all levels of government. There's a few Republicans scattered here and there, perhaps, judges that get appointed by a Republican governor. They're technically nonpartisan, but it's few and far between. And so it's very, very difficult for a Republican to get in. Interestingly enough, over in the Athens, Clark County, where the University of Georgia is, there was a Soros DA over there who lost. Okay. This is the same DA's office that's at least nominally in charge of the Laken Riley murder trial that's now a bench trial. But the DA there, she lost overwhelmingly to a write-in candidate. Okay, there was no Republican challenger. This guy mounted a write-in challenge to her, and he unseated her with something like 70% of the vote as a write-in. That's how much she was disliked by the deep blue voters of Athens, Clark County. But of course, that judicial circuit also includes Oconee County, which is next door, and it's bright, bright red. But nevertheless, the Soros DA from Athens, Clark County is out. New guy coming in, but unfortunately, outgoing DA, her election not to pursue the death penalty against Jose Ibarra in the Laken Riley case, that stands.
Although your friend, I forget her name now, outperformed Trump in Fulton County, the numbers were only in Fulton County for
correct
Fani Willis and not all of Georgia.
Correct.
So Fani Willis gets elected for another 4 years is the next term.
Right. Judge McAfee
did not disqualify her. That's currently going to appeal. Absolutely should have, and I still think her office will get disqualified on appeal, which will have no impact on her 4 years, her 4-year reelection.
That's right.
The only thing that would have an impact on that is whether or not she's sanctioned and removed from office through some sort of other proceeding.
Yeah, she's not going to get removed from office except by the voters. That's the only way really to get rid of, unless she was somehow indicted for some kind of felony and then the governor could remove her. We don't have any ability to recall elected officials in Georgia. It's not like in Florida where the governor can yank DAs out of their post when they don't do their job or whatever. The governor here has no role in this. And so unless she gets indicted for a felony, she's going to be in office until the voters decide they don't want her anymore, or she decides to do something else. Honestly, I thought she had her eyes on DC in the event of a Harris win, but I guess those dreams went up in smoke.
If she gets indicted on RICO charges for conspiracy to violate civil rights, but to apply the same argument to her as to Trump, she got reelected in full awareness of fact that she's a corrupt hack who sleeps around with, hires her friends. And if that's what they want, can't come in afterwards and defy the will of the people unless she absolutely breaks the law.
Well, the interesting thing about this indictment, and I was, Ashley Merchant is one of my best lawyer friends. She and her husband, John, both are great lawyers, and they're both working on this case. Ashley's the one who everybody thinks of, but John, her husband and law partner, is also very much involved in this case. And, she's like the Aaron Brockovich of this whole thing. She and I were talking recently. In fact, just last weekend, we were at a seminar. The oral argument, I think, is coming up. And if they win, if Ashley and crew win, then all the defendants win, and Willis is tossed off the case. But Willis could then appeal to the Georgia Supreme Court. Now, that would be a discretionary appeal, so they don't have to take it. On the other hand, if it goes the other way, and let's say Willis wins at the Court of Appeals, which I think is very unlikely, but if she wins, then Ashley and company can file a discretionary appeal. My prediction is this: if Ashley and them lose, the Georgia Supreme Court will take it, because I feel very confident the Georgia Supreme Court would toss Willis. But if Willis loses at the Court of Appeals level and then appeals, I think that the Georgia Supreme Court says, no, we're not going to hear your appeal. And that, of course, would kill the case. One way or another, I think she's gone, and it's going to be an indictment without a prosecutor. And then the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia has to decide, are you going to find another prosecutor that wants to take this up? And the answer to that is hell no. There's no DA wants this.
Well, but at that point, because there would still be the precedent of not prosecuting a sitting president. So even if this is one question I had as relates to Merchant in New York, let's see, maybe Leticia James, the protocol of not prosecuting or not going after a sitting president, the charges have already been brought, so it wouldn't be a question of bringing them against a sitting president, but they would have to pause them until Trump is out of office, right? Even if it's not dismissed.
Well, so the Justice Department on the federal level has that policy, and that's why Jack Smith is pulling the plug on everything. That policy doesn't exist in the Fulton County DA's office. However, I cannot foresee a trial judge in the Fulton County Superior Court bringing a case to trial involving a sitting president. But you got to remember, though, look, I guess it's not beyond the realm of possibility. Judge McAfee has already signaled that he's going to break this case up and have multiple trials instead of trying to do all the defendants at once. So theoretically, he could take 3 or 4 or 5 of the defendants that aren't the president of the United States, try them again. But I think that's also very unlikely. It's theoretically possible, but hey, we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. The Georgia intrigue is not over. It's less palpable than it was, say, 7, 8, 9 months ago, but it's not over yet.
Hold on. Now you're actually pointing to a distinction that I sort of glossed over. It's a federal policy of not going after the president, and there's no equivalent state policy. Is there not jurisprudential precedent? Because I'm trying to think of what happened with Clinton, albeit it was a civil suit. Do they not suspend civil suits during the presidency?
I'd have to look that up. Suspending the case. Yeah. I mean, there's no rule of law that says it has to be suspended. There's no rule of law that says that, the state can't prosecute a sitting president. There's a good argument for removing it to federal court. But look, it's a practical issue. As a practical matter, no judge in their right mind would even try to pull that off because of the logistics. So I don't know of any precedent for it. Honestly, I don't like that in New York, the case is still kind of hanging out there in limbo. I would have rather had asked Merchant to rule on the issue of immunity. And look, maybe Merchant decides to do the smart and wise thing for once and says, okay, I'm going to use this as my off ramp to get rid of this thing. Now that he's president, whatever, the whole lawfare did not work. We're going to go ahead and just pull the plug on it. He could have granted the motion to dismiss on immunity, and that would have been the end of that case. I would have wanted him to at least rule to see if he was going to go that way. And if he ruled against me, if I'm representing Trump, then I take it up on appeal, and then we suspend things. I just don't think it's a good thing to have an open case pending, hanging over his head that way.
It's amazing. So the oral arguments in Fani Willis's appeal of her non-disqualification starts when now?
December the 5th.
It's going to be broadcast.
I'm doing it on my channel, Inside the Law. I'm sure others will as well.
Yeah. This is good. I mean, there will be some overlap, but yeah, I think, dude, this is the saga that we're going to be all following. Fani Willis reelected, appeals. How long is it supposed to last? And then after that, it's going to be months until you get a written judgment.
How long will the oral argument last?
Yeah.
Oh, it's I forget how much time they give the parties, but it may be an hour. So it'll be over. I think it starts in the morning. It'll be done.
Oh, so like a day. It's not a drawn out judicial saga.
No, most of this has been done on pleadings, the written pleadings, and the oral argument. I think a couple of the lawyers, I think Ashley and probably Steve Sadow, John, that's Donald Trump's lawyer. I think those will probably be the two arguing, splitting their time, and then of course Willis, her appellate team gets to argue as well. But oral arguments are sort of the icing on the cake. Most of the meat and potatoes of these appeals is done in the written briefs. That will happen, and then we'll get an opinion. It could be pretty quick, or it could be a month or two before we get an opinion out of the Court of Appeals.
Have any written briefs been submitted yet? Are they submitted in advance, or do they plead and then submit them afterwards?
I would be shocked if they haven't already finished briefing everything. They have a scheduling order like most appeals do, where briefs are due and where responsive reply briefs may be due. I don't know that information off the top of my head, what the deadlines were, but I'm sure it's already been briefed. Yes. There may be some supplement. And there's the other thing is there's what we call amicus briefs, where the so-called friend of the court briefs, where outside third parties weigh in and ask the court to support one side or another. There's a lot of those in the case, just like there's a lot of those in the Florida documents case that was tossed by Judge Cannon that's now up on appeal. I was looking at Jack Smith's petition to suspend, that appeal for the time being. That was filed like yesterday. There was a notice of interested parties, and it had a long laundry list of maybe a dozen or more what we call interested parties, which are outside entities that have filed amicus briefs in that as well. So a lot of stuff going on.
No, it's wild. It's wild. Who's filing an amicus in the Fulton County, the Fani Willis case?
I'd have to look. Jay Sekulow, his outfit, I know, has filed one. They filed one, I think, with the trial court, and I feel confident that they have filed it as well. I'd have to look and see, to be honest with you, but I know that there's 3 or 4 or 5 at least outside groups.